Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Good afternoon to the Barbadian public. 2022 has been a very challenging year, and the extent to which we have faced those challenges as a government and as a country, I think needs to be lauded because it is through the working together with respect to the social partnership as well as with ordinary Barbadians that we have been able to respond in an affordable way with respect to a number of interventions this year since the budget in March to be able to address the escalating fuel and food prices since the budget was debated in March of 2022. This time last year, we were looking forward to a significant increase in tourism arrivals, and that has materialized certainly this year. But it has been underpinned by, as I said, the fuel costs as well as food costs, along with freight costs escalating because of the war in Ukraine. The government has introduced a number of measures which will culminate at the end of January, and we are currently reviewing the circumstances to determine whether or not those measures will continue past January 31st in order to make sure that we can protect Barbadians as best as we can. We do expect to end the year with about 10% GDP, down slightly from just about 11.5 that we projected at the beginning of 2022. And therefore, we feel as if we've been able to weather the storm of 2022, notwithstanding the current challenges that we have had. We are still responding to repair and to rebuild a number of houses from Hurricane Elsa. That project continues, and that will culminate by the middle of 2023. And we hope that we should be able to get all those persons back into their homes as quickly as possible. It has been a particular challenge with respect to being able to coordinate that, given that we have seen disruptions with respect to supply chains across the economy, and therefore that too has been impacted with respect to its execution, and we hope to be able to complete that by June of 2023. All in all, we have been able to ensure that we can respond to the needs of ordinary Barbadians in a myriad of ways, and therefore we will continue to monitor to determine through consultations with the private sector whether or not, as I mentioned earlier, those measures will continue post January 31st of 2023. It is very interesting because the forward bookings with respect to tourism look extremely good for the upcoming winter season. We will see a significant increase in cruise ship arrivals to the country. You know that we had some issues during the summer with respect to the fall off in that, and we hope to be able to see a significant improvement within that particular space, as well as during the summer of next year. And all things equal, we anticipate that we should see a very strong and robust performance. Some of the areas of concern that we are monitoring obviously relates to the fact that there are still public health measures being executed in China. And therefore, the extent to which that continues obviously poses a particular threat, not just in relation to the production and the supply chain, but obviously the costs associated with goods coming out of that space. And we are monitoring that obviously to further continue to the discussions with the private sector in order to ensure that we can mitigate any increased costs, as we have been doing certainly for most of this year. And we hope to be able to ensure then that a number of critical projects, capital projects, under the BERT program, that those can commence in earnest certainly during the first half of 2023, so that we feel very confident that we should be able to reach a 5% growth rate in 2023, conservatively so, in order to ensure that the economy recovers. We continue to focus on how we can include ordinary Barbadians in the recovery, and therefore initiatives such as renewable energy, as the Prime Minister announced, with respect to the rights for persons to have it on their roofs, will continue in earnest with respect to those who are able to do it on their own, but equally within the context of the credit union sector and others, to be able to bring pool instruments that will allow persons to purchase a small part of effectively a mutual fund within that space to be able to help drive the renewable energy sector. And therefore, these are some of the critical things that, was in a very constrained environment, will cause us to to have to be quite innovative with respect to government's response. We feel very confident that with that approach, both individually as well as collectively, that we can literally see as inclusive recovery as possible. One of the things that I am pleased, having met with the banks a few weeks earlier, in January of 2019, I met with all of the financial institutions who participate in the payment system. And they have all been able now to be able to complete their testing with respect to the upgrade of the real-time ACH. And I really want to encourage Barbadians to get on board with that initiative. And whilst they assured me that they did not want to introduce new technology during the Christmas season, they have agreed to be able to launch that in February of 2023. And therefore, I urge Barbadians and business people to be able to help us to be able to adopt these technologies so that we're able to pay digitally, save time with respect to processing of payments right across the economy, such that the cost of doing business can be reduced significantly in 2023. And we believe that that intervention, whilst will take root from February of 2023, we believe that that very critical reform exercise, which will now democratize the entire payment system. In the past, the payment systems were managed and owned exclusively by the 5 commercial banks. You will now have an ecosystem within which players will operate, and therefore competition, which is always healthy, is important, which will be able to open up opportunities for many businesses in Barbados to be able not just to pay, but to be able to have access to e-commerce solutions, which would allow them to be able to trade globally. And we believe that that, coupled with the very strong export thrust that Export Barbados is leading, we hope that we will see significant dividends with respect to that specific set of reforms, so that we can literally move the economy from what it has been in terms of the printing of checks and the circulation of cash in a significant way onto a digital platform, so that whether you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large business for that matter, that you will be able to have a better chance of being able to record your financial statements in a much easier way, which would allow businesses then to be able to access finance in a much more affordable and easier way, given the introduction of the Fair Credit Reporting Bill. So we are confident that with those sets of reforms, and notwithstanding some of the international challenges, that we will be in a position to be able to drive growth domestically by being able to improve the efficiency within right across the system. A government is working hard itself to be able to digitize as much of its processes by the middle of next year, such that the regular humbugs with respect to paying government should come to an end, and therefore we will be able to see less lines, provided that people cooperate with respect to onboarding with their financial institutions and being able to pay. And therefore, I believe very strongly that if we do this, that not only will your customer service improve, but it means that your time that you spend obviously queuing in a line, whether it's to pay a government or to pay the private sector, that we can now move the economy onto a different level, and therefore be able to do business far easier than we have been seeing before. So I really want to urge Barbadians to be able to get on board with respect to that initiative. There are going to be a multiplicity of options available to you, and therefore there's no specific intervention that you need to do, whether you're comfortable with paying with your mobile phone or QR code with your coconut vendor and those in the informal sector. It also provides a measure of security, which I think is important in these times with respect to being able to, having worked hard all day, to ensure that businesses will be able to have much secure footing with respect to the management of their resources. And therefore, I urge all Barbadians to be able to come on board. The central bank certainly will roll out its communication campaign more aggressively, and we'll be able to, early in the new year, appoint the Payments Council to be able to oversee the transition with respect to these matters. Now, a lot has happened this year, but I don't want to be overly long this afternoon, because I'm conscious that you are all eager to get back to your shopping, and therefore I want to indicate that the government of Barbados has agreed that on Wednesday, December 21st, 2022, shall be a VAT holiday in Barbados. As the case last year, the objective is to provide a welcome ease for consumers, which is obviously on top of what has happened already for the year, and we feel that the timing is right with respect to being able to do this in a significant way. Having faced about 33 months of significant economic challenges, COVID, the ashfall, Hurricane Elsa, the war in Ukraine this year, we believe that at this Yuletide season, consumers will certainly will benefit from the 17.5% reduction in prices on the day of goods on the day that attract VAT, and therefore will be able to stretch their budgets even further than previously anticipated. The public is asked to note the following conditions. Eligible sales, only goods are eligible. Eligible goods must be available for sale with immediate issuance or delivery to the customer on the day. Orders for goods that are not in stock do not qualify. Hire purchase sales are eligible. This is to facilitate those persons who may not have the ready cash to be able to make purchases at this time. Credit purchases, however, or goods on consignment or from wholesale distribution centers are not eligible. Let me repeat. Credit purchases or goods on consignment or from wholesale distribution centers are not eligible. We all know the difference between wholesale and retail. This is a retail exercise, and therefore I want to reiterate that that is particularly important for the public to note. Motor vehicles, gasoline, LPG and diesel, guns, ammunition, cigarettes and alcoholic beverages are not eligible. The supply of accommodation is not eligible, and businesses are asked to note the following administrative arrangements. Companies or businesses will file their VAT return as usual, but record zero-rated supplies for the day on Wednesday, i.e. the business will enter the items for the VAT return as zero-rated sales in line 105. This will allow BRA to track the amount of sales and VAT foregone for the day on Wednesday, ensuring a risk-based approach for auditing purposes. In filing their VAT, companies will provide sales data, receipts, specifically to the VAT holiday. Companies will have to issue a tax invoice to the customer with VAT recorded at 0%. As the supply is zero-rated, the recovery of input tax is permitted, and the business can recover the VAT initially paid. Businesses will benefit from greater sales due to the increased purchasing power of consumers on the day, and we are confident that this represents a win-win for businesses as well as consumers on Wednesday. I want to take this opportunity to wish all Barbadians a very happy, special, and safe Merry Christmas. All the very best for 2023. Thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, how does an initiative what this cost in the government?
Right, so usually within the recent years we've been averaging about $90 million in VAT in December. So on average it's about 3 to 3.5, 4, depending on obviously when people shop. Today was payday for most government workers, and I suspect most persons, so therefore you will anticipate an increase in shopping certainly in the next few days. But on average it's about $3 to $3.5 million per day. Last year when we did the assessment, it came in at just around 4.5, given obviously with respect to the increase in sales on the day in relation to that. So the data that we have been able to mine demonstrates that obviously notwithstanding the little seasonality with respect to the fact that it was on the day that we gave the waiver, it is very much affordable in the context of being able to for government to be able to sustain it. One of the things that we are looking with the statistical office next year to be able to do is to work on a retail sales index, which will be able to better track retail sales across the economy, which we feel will serve as a leading indicator with respect to activity, and that's something that we will embark on in 2023 in order to be able to bring more information to the public in relation to retail sales.
Okay, last year, the business people complained that they had not been consulted and therefore they didn't have enough time in order to make their system compatible. Was there discussion this time around, and should there be any concerns about that?
Well, someone sent me a link earlier from one of your media houses indicating that the date will be announced this afternoon. We did consult with the BPSA as well as the Chamber of Commerce, who cover the range of retail entities, most of the retail entities in Barbados, to advise them that we were embarking on this particular initiative. I think learning from last year, then it would be much easier for them to be able to change the systems, given that I would imagine that they would have documented the SOP in relation to the process flow, which would allow them to, between tonight and tomorrow to be able to ready their systems with respect to having the prices adjusted on the day. One of the things that I will urge businesses is something that came up last year. So for sales that end tomorrow, I can only urge persons to please just allow them to continue on Wednesday. If you're so minded, because whilst I cannot tell you what to price your goods at, last year there were some questions with respect to consumers going into the store and seeing a different price, but on very close inspection, the sales were coming to an end the day before, and that was long published, and therefore I urge businesses to just extend for those that are coming to an end tomorrow. See whether or not you can extend it on Wednesday so that the public really can get maximum benefit as much as possible.
I didn't hear. I assume that you wouldn't give the entire list right there, but any changes to the list for this year?
Let me
You
see.
add on anything
No, we've
this
not.
time, or is the same list as
No,
from
same,
before?
the same list as before. It is all goods, all right, with the exception, as I mentioned, of the motor vehicles, gasoline, LPG, diesel, and guns, and liquor, and liquor. People can buy the liquor anyhow, yeah. But it's really about being able to spur other activity. Interestingly, last year we saw a significant increase in purchase of car parts, as well as construction materials, which people took the opportunity to be able to purchase, and that obviously would have meant that persons had a significant savings within that particular space, and we've seen persons benefit from that. I don't know what people will buy again this year, but if that trend continues, then I anticipate that consumers will see a significant benefit on the day. Naturally, this time of year, people buy fridges and TVs and those types of white goods there, which all are eligible under the program. So that would be a welcome ease with respect to some of those goods. Let me just state that mobile services are services, not goods. We had a question last year in relation to that. So those are not eligible with respect to the VAT holiday. But we haven't added anything new with respect to the process.
Mr. Minister, for next year, something outside the box for a VAT-free liquor day.
Well, considering that there's been much discussion in the public domain with respect to the introduction of the breathalyzer and those issues on the table, I don't currently anticipate the promotion of VAT-free for alcohol. That's not something that we would want to necessarily encourage people to do, given that there is a road safety concern with respect to that. But it's something that continues to bring in significant revenue for our government. And so cigarettes and alcohol, given our NCD profile, really wouldn't fit within the policy consideration, certainly at this time.
Mr. Straughn, just to go back to the earlier part of your presentation, can you indicate how many households are now left to be facilitated really LC repairs?
That number does not immediately come to mind. My apologies. The Minister of Housing certainly has been working very hard with respect to NHC, RDC, and UDC. They've been able to approach the catastrophe fund to be able to help accelerate the execution of their works, and we feel that should give them sufficient impetus to be able to bring the process to conclusion.
Can you say it's close to
I think the last number that I heard, it was around 60 to 70% complete. It's taken very, 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 very long because of some of the reasons that it is, but I speak subject to correction, and we feel that we should be in a position not just with respect to access to financing, but being able to accelerate the building of houses, generally speaking, right across the economy, by being able to unlock the mortgage certificates within the credit union space for a number of public servants, but also a number of persons in the private sector who earn less than $5,000, and even to some degree with the introduction of the Joy Villa project for persons who are earning less than $2,000 per month. And therefore we feel that between NHC as well as HOPE, in terms of executing those projects, that they should be able to unlock that capital, to be able to mobilize those domestic resources and be able to accelerate government's housing program to get people back into their houses. Go ahead.
And regarding the tourism information you provided, can the government yet indicate which projects that were to come on stream early next year, like Hyatt and Royalton? What's the position with them? We haven't heard
Well,
about them.
they have been putting together their financing, as you would appreciate, with global interest rates rising, and it happened with COVID, when you had the cessation of travel, people reassess the risk at the time. When we thought that we were getting over that particular hurdle, we've now seen this year a significant increase in global interest rates, which means that financing and the cost of financing has become more expensive. So we know that they are pulling together those numbers to be able to execute. We did encourage everybody at 2 years ago to start, because we felt that it was critical to do so, given you did not know when travel would resume. But nevertheless, the circumstances for financing were much more accommodating, and therefore they would have been completing now with a slightly increased interest rate, rather than starting with interest rates as they are. But Sandwich Castle certainly will, as you've seen the ads in the paper, they will open, have a soft launch early in the first quarter, and therefore that too will bring more rooms onto the market, about 1,000 odd jobs for Barbadians to be able to get. So you will see going through 2023, and then obviously into 2024, as that opens fully, you will see additional demand with respect to that. There are a range of other smaller projects that have continued and will continue, given the type of financing that's in place. And so we've seen a significant amount of construction activity all through COVID, and I'm grateful to the private sector for being able to execute those. We do hope that we can get those large ones obviously off of the ground, notwithstanding supply logistics issues and all of that. As you appreciate, the volume of demand with respect to the sector and materials and that type of thing are of in terms of what's happening with respect to the cost within that space. It's something that we'll continue to monitor to make sure that they can get off the ground. So all of the regulatory matters from our end have been resolved. It's just a matter of completing the financing, and I hope that they can do so in time without further experiencing further increases in interest rates, because some of the financing obviously is coming from outside.
Good evening, sir.
Yep.
Some Barbadians have been querying when they will receive the income tax return, and they on that.
Well, income tax returns have started to pay out. I think what the public should appreciate that was we have seen a couple of things. We've seen increased revenue. We've also foregone revenue, but government's expenditures actually increased like everybody else as well. So we have a number of departments that have been requesting, as with everybody in Barbados, additional funds for electricity and the like there. So it's a slight issue with cash flow with respect to the interventions that we have made to forego revenue, which obviously means then that the ability to be able to do everything else as well as to pay the refunds, but most of them have been paid. I urge the public's patience. We have been faithful with respect to the paying of the income tax refunds. If you're being audited, then that's a slightly different arrangement. But we hope that we can get past this cash crunch. And I want to say to you that when the ash fell in April of 2021, and then we had the Hurricane Elsa in July. You will recall that at that time too, we were still having the facilities outside of Harrison Point being stood up for the Delta variant. So the demand for cash, literally to respond to the ash, the hurricane, as well as the Delta surge in the summer, really meant that we had to manage literally what we were going to do, given that we had to respond very quickly to those immediate concerns. And therefore, 2021-22 really was a very there was significant pressure because of those events on the demand for cash outside of what government had planned to be able to execute during the year, and therefore we've seen it has had an impact obviously on some of those matters. But and as you know, we still continue to provide the adoptive family program, as well as a range of other programs to be able to protect people. So the demand for cash has been quite intense, and that's why we feel that once we are able to complete the repairs and the reconstruction for Hurricane Elsa, then that should moderate the cash crunch on government. But we have gotten over that. But obviously, with everything else that's happened, with the war and the other measures that have been put in place, it clearly would have an impact with respect to the timeliness, with respect to that. So it's not us being, for lack of a better term, worthless. It's just the reality in terms of dealing with the demands for cash as required, foregoing revenue, which obviously means then that you don't have enough resources to be able to keep up. But we've stayed current for the most part with respect to being able to settle most of them. I really hope that we can get back to normalcy certainly in 2023, and therefore, but that's barring any other significant interventions in the year. Yeah. So, with that said, let me wish you and your families, and certainly for the rest of Barbados, as I said, a very safe, merry, and Christmas, and all the best for 2023. Thank you very much.
Same thing, Mr. Minister.